Hey, welcome to Optimise Your Body with Martin Silva, where we talk raw, uncut facts to truly help you optimize your body.
Good evening for me, lads, this time. Instead of it being a early morning and a late night for you, it's a little bit of a different thing for me. I'm not sitting here. I can't talk about my sunset over my hammock in the Bahamas now. I'm going to talk about just darkness. I'm in an office. That's not as much fun, really, is it?
Look, to be honest, don't worry. It's not like Jared and I can report about anything that's really appealing outside. I'm staring out the window at the moment, and I think the Melbourne weather has found its way to Sydney, which is not.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, we've had Ali, to provide you with context, we've had, I think they said it was the wettest day in November yesterday since about 1985 or 84 or something as that description.
Oh, wow.
So
Crazy.
That's a lot of water.
Yeah, there was cars floating. There was cars floating and all sorts. It was chaos yesterday.
Are you serious? That's fucking intense.
Well, there's probably one car, but it sounds better than that for the story. One car was floating. That sounds pretty chaotic. You know what I mean?
So to everyone
we had that on
listening
Melbourne Cup Day here.
To everyone listening in, this amazing British accent that we've had join us in the background is Mr. Martin Silva, known as one of the greatest physiques actually at the moment globally, and a man of an 8-pack, but I think it could probably be 10 for all we know, as far as we see online. But this gentleman is a Wbff Pro and also a very accomplished fitness professional. He's got a very you look like an amazing online presence. So, Martin, look, why don't you tell us a little bit more about your history, your background, and I'm excited to let our listeners know that this is a gentleman that's done it completely all the way through naturally.
Thanks very much for the introduction. So, yeah, just a quick insight into my background. I've always been very active and into playing sports and whatnot. So I've always had a very competitive nature. Grew up like as with a single mother raising me, and she always pushed me to play sports and all that kind of stuff. So I really it was just in my nature, really, the competitive kind of stuff. And then I was introduced. Basically, I qualified as a personal trainer at a young age, at the age of about 19. Didn't really get on too well in college, and then I never looked back. Really, I just loved it. I started lifting weights really young. I started lifting weights at like the age of 14. And like I said, I was a trainer by the age of 19, and then always playing rugby. Not really at that higher level, but always playing rugby and enjoying it and playing multiple sports really. And then I think it was in 2013 I found out about the world of competing. Really, obviously, I always knew what bodybuilding was and wasn't really big into it. But then I found out about initially how I started was as a men's physique athlete, IFBB.
Yeah.
So yes, and this is obviously all in the UK. I'm from Wales in the UK. So so that's where it started really. And I stepped on stage as a men's physique athlete in 2013. And then from 2013 up until 2016, I think I competed 8 times. So I didn't quite get the results I wanted as a men's physique athlete in IFBB. But then I managed to jump ships over to the WBFF. I've competed 3 times with the WBFF and made my way up to the pro level. Obviously, I've done it naturally as well. But and just in terms of my livelihood, like I said, I've been a personal trainer for like 12, 13 years. I've kind of dipped in and out of online coaching. I've just been trying to learn and try and, learn as much as I can about nutrition and whatnot in the meantime. Yeah. And because everyone knows everyone's different. So when it comes to actually getting someone long-term results, right nowadays I'm more about getting people lifetime results in terms of health. Yeah. And my kind of philosophy is if you can make health a priority, then the aesthetics come as a byproduct. And that's kind of where I'm at now, really.
Yeah.
Sustainable long-term results.
Correct.
That's what we're all
it's
about.
definitely
Good.
It's definitely the best way to be. And I think, when you've got that approach to anything, the transition then to being able to communicate that from an online process becomes far easier. Wouldn't you agree, guys?
Yeah. Look, most definitely. I've seen Martin around the traps at Titan Fitness. He made the move. I think 1 or 2 years ago, you came over from the UK and found your way to the beaches. Is that correct?
That's right, mate. Yeah, about 20 months ago. Yeah, so not far off 2 years now. Yeah.
Yeah. So
What's that?
We cannot blame you.
No, I know you can't. You can't blame me. Coming from wet, windy Wales to the sunny beaches in the eastern suburbs.
And that's the thing is just looking through Martin's Instagram, any of our listeners, if you get the opportunity after this or during the podcast, you'll get a grasp of what Martin's all about with regard to that notion of health being a priority first and foremost, and then how that translates, the physique being the byproduct of that. And you can see that he's leading that healthy lifestyle, and just seeing the way in which he interacts and engages with a lot of his Gen Pop clients. I was actually checking your Instagram story, today, and the last couple of weeks you've been focused on flexibility, mobility work, and you're taking that, translating that to some of your clients. And I mean, the proof is in the pudding. You're leading a healthier lifestyle, and your physique still looks phenomenal, even if you're not competing.
Thanks, mate.
I think over the last couple of weeks we've really been honing in on, whilst we're all taking our fitness seriously and we've been competitors at one point or another, and you yourself doing 8 shows in the past, we are very mindful that a sustainable approach, looking at long-term health, is really important. I know that Jared, you're really pushing that with a lot of your clients as well. Just that notion of, being in it for the long game, not the short game.
Yeah, 100%. I think everyone needs to have that focus though, because if we look at things short term, then we're short sighted. We don't take in the whole picture, and that's where we just run into troubles, because we're so focused and we burn out really quickly in this short period of time, and then we're left wondering where to go. But if we take a long term approach, and I think Ali and myself, and yourself, Robbie, we've all had to take the long-term approach in coming back from injuries and rehabilitation. And I think we've said this in podcasts before, but this probably gives us more of an insight into looking at it long-term. When I guess, like, I was younger, it was always harder, faster, more weight is better. But then when you take a step back and think about long-term, I want to still be lifting weights when I'm 50, 60 years old. Maybe nowhere near as intensely, but I still want to be able to do the fun things that I enjoy and what makes life enjoyable and keeping me healthy and fit. And I think that just needs to translate into others. And I do try and talk about this with my clients, because it's a big thing looking at the long-term picture.
Yeah. Absolutely. I just wanted to say on that note, that's exactly what I say as well, and what my belief is. Literally, there's no reason why you shouldn't be lifting weights until pretty much the day you die. That might be a bit drastic, but if you do it right, and as Robbie was saying with mobility and stuff like that, it's only about 2 years ago I started taking the mobility stuff seriously, because, as you said, with injuries, you get niggles here and there, and you kind of ignore it to a certain extent because you're used to just like cracking on and pushing yourself, and then you think to yourself, oh, okay. And to be honest, like that concept alone, just focusing on moving better and loosening up my tight muscles and strengthening my weak muscles, that alone was a game changer. I built more muscle, my posture improved and everything. So, yeah.
Look, and I can completely attest to that too, Martin, because, the comeback for me post my broken back, that's exactly what it's looked like. And mobility and, I guess, patterns of movement and looking at good organization of my spine before anything else has allowed my physique to progress at an exponential rate, and in ways I would never have imagined just doing the traditional methods to get to stage. So the complete shape of my physique has changed. The tapered waistline I've been able to achieve by changing the protocols and the way that I actually approach training, and by incorporating mobility and flexibility as one of the primary elements of importance within a fitness parameter, being mobility, flexibility, as well as then strength and then cardiovascular fitness. It's all three. It's not just go hard, go strong, or not just go run a marathon. It's all three elements for proper optimal health. And when you do adopt that strategy where all three come into play, I tell you what, magic actually happens. And it might feel like you take a little bit of a kindergarten approach at times to what you're doing, because you might be doing more execution over effort-based stuff. But long term, I think longevity of you in the game, in the sport, and then in life, in fitness is there. But also, I think you bring a better physique. I really do. I truly believe that. I know that I've been able to prove that theory on stage now 3 years consecutive.
Wow.
Yeah, and I think, looking at that health perspective and looking at that long-term approach and how often we can get so, focused on short game, whether it's a competition or whatever. Just looking at Martin, I was looking at your Instagram before, and you made a recent post. And it's timely because, in light of the fact that we're about to reach the festive season, the holidays, and summer if you're down under, and what you show is and I quote, fluffy Martin.
That's right.
Wasn't it
cuddly. That's right. Yeah, cuddly
Is it
Martin.
cuddly Martin? I don't know.
Oh, very cuddly.
Martin, he looked joyful. So.
I think we should make a teddy. I think we should make a
and
teddy.
I'm pretty sure that
that'd be wicked.
Pretty sure, Martin, that my response to this was Cuddly Martin is actually what most people's desirable optimal outcome would be. And you're
being honest, yeah, it's cuddly. It's Cuddly Martin. Cuddly Martin's got a chest that I would want, so I think I'd be happy with that. But
thanks, mate.
One of the things
I'll swap my chest for your obliques.
Oh gosh,
that's a good trade-off.
One of the things that I saw was you've got a comparison shot, and you've got you at 9% body fat, and then you've got yourself absolutely dialed in at 3% body fat prior to stepping on stage. And what you made mention of is finding that balance between something that it's unsustainable at 3% body fat and absolutely shredded, and 13% body fat where perhaps you may have felt that you let yourself go or relaxed a little bit more over the festive season. I think something that is of interest and people can relate to or want to relate to is how have you found that perfect balance, do you find, between being this, like, to be perfectly honest, the middle ground, you're pretty dialed in, but having said what you've mentioned is that not only from a physical standpoint, but from a psychological standpoint, you're happy with this. But how have you found that balance, being someone who obviously took your competing very seriously at one point? How have you found that balance?
Yeah, it's a good way to put it. To be honest, I mean, this, as you said, perfect balance. As you know, like, there's probably no such thing as perfect balance, but we're always striving for that, right? And I'm definitely getting closer and closer to a more balanced lifestyle. I'm managing to, as I said, maintain the aesthetics now without actually thinking about it. It's now a byproduct. It's the same as you guys, right? We lift weights to feel good, right? So that's kind of like where I was going with putting health first. Obviously, we want to look good, but when you know what it's like. You do a weight training session, you feel better afterwards, right? So you feel good, and then that becomes, a byproduct, as I said. But to find that balance was quite a long road, really, to be honest. And I kind of built up a bit of I'm not sure if you guys can relate to this, but I built up an eating disorder, essentially, the binge eating disorder, from restricting so many times, not only for shows, but for photo shoots and whatnot. And I built up a really, really unhealthy relationship with food. So I wasn't really in a good place mentally. And I was really, this is as far as up until about 2.5 years ago, actually. And I used to really battle. It's probably about 2.5 years ago. I used to really battle with maintaining my physique. So this would be an example. So, like, I would go Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Bear in mind, this is not even when I'm competing or training for anything. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I would be like kind of restricting my food. So I'd be eating, I would think back then that I was eating healthy, but in reality, I was eating chicken, broccoli, salmon, the kind of stuff you eat when you're competing with a little bit more variety. Then I would get to Friday and I'd be like, I'd be struggling to keep it together. And I'd be like, right, I feel like I need something like a cheat meal. And then before you know it, I'd have one meal, and then it would sometimes turn into a Friday, Saturday, Sunday binge. So, and I repeated that cycle for like a year or two, and how I haven't done any permanent damage, I really don't know. So, in answer to your question, it's kind of like the suffering I went through, really, with the body image issues as well, because you know what it's like. You've been on stage and you're being critiqued against some of the best athletes on the planet. So any insecurities you've got, I mean, sometimes it kind of makes them worse. So that's why I always say to people, try and peel off the layers as to why you want to compete before you do it, because I think the aftermath is just as important as actually what you're doing leading up to it. is the aftermath. Have you got a bit of a game plan as to what you're going to do afterwards? But so to find that balance, it was mainly a case of learning and listening to podcasts, actually. So tuning into one particular podcast, Mind Pump. I'm going to give them a little shout out because they kind of changed the game for me. Mind Pump, they're based in America. And those guys have been like trainers for like 20 years. One of them is an Wbff Pro men's physique guy. And I just learned so much from them. I started applying the stuff they were saying, and just not just them, but I was just, trying stuff like intermittent fasting and just experimenting, and then gradually just finding a bit more balance. And before you know it, then, as I said, the aesthetics came as just a result of really focusing on internally on, for example, how's my sleep? How's my skin? Am I getting stronger in the gym? So focusing on my performance as opposed to just how I look. That's exactly right. Yeah. So yeah, it's kind of a long-winded answer, but along those lines.
It's funny that it's funny you say the word balance, Martin, because like a lot of people, it's a bit of a thing that's going around, I guess, the industry at the moment with comp season coming to an end. People, they all have their own different version of balance. And like you were saying, you had an eating disorder. I had no idea what you're talking about, mate. I like to eat steamed chicken and broccoli 365 days a year. So I'm a true athlete. I never go off plan. I don't know what you're talking about. I think anyone that does shows, come on, let's be serious. Doesn't matter if you're a pro or an amateur. To a degree, we do. Like even after going through such a strict diet phase, it's that it might only be 2 or 3 days, and it could carry on for
but still
2 or 3 weeks. Absolutely. It doesn't matter. We all. It's very unhealthy. Yes, from that mindset being so restricted, but. It's funny the term you use, balance, because it is going around at the moment and everyone has their own version. Like you say 2 years ago when you were eating really clean Monday to Friday and then it was Friday night cheat meal, you probably would have thought, I'm balanced. And then Saturday would lead into another cheat meal and you're like, no, it's all right because I did 5 days of good dieting and hard training. But then by the time it got to the Sunday, you start to question yourself. And I'm sure you're not alone in any aspect. There are so many people out there that struggle with this as well. But it is just about education and taking time and learning what works for your body. And like you said, listening to different podcasts and getting different avenues of information. Because the problem is I think that a lot of people, they do what they've done for so long and they've done this dieting and that's all they do. They do their comp prep diet and then when they're not in comp prep, they add a little bit more carbs. But there's no actual variety and there's no enjoyment in what they're doing. And it's the same thing with their training. It's the same thing day in, day out. And no wonder why it feels like Groundhog Day, because it is. And no one's going to enjoy that. And like you said, we go into the gym, we lift for enjoyment. You should be eating for enjoyment too. As humans, we eat as social creatures. Like we love to go out and socialize with people. So if you're only ever locked away eating out of Tupperware containers, it's only going to drive you one way. So balance is such a massive thing, and finding each individual's version of what balance is. 100%. I think that's the key.
That's it. And go on. I was just going to say something real quick, and that's kind of one of the reasons why I started my own podcast. So here's my little chance for a plug now, by the way. It's Optimise Your Body, my podcast. And like the on or off mentality, right? That's what we're looking at now. We're looking at, in the fitness industry right now, there's so much. I heard you guys talking about this actually on the first ever episode. You mentioned there's so much bad information out there, right? And the thing is, like, people are taking the wrong information, and the on or off mentality, I mean, that is something that people need to hone in on, right? Because like you said just then, dieting down for something, for a particular thing, whether or not it's a holiday or a photo shoot, you cannot live your whole life as a healthy human with that mentality. You need to try and find that balance and focus on, for example, eating more vegetables. That was a game changer for me. Just consistently eating more vegetables. I started feeling better, and then that alone was a game changer. So,
I just think we're just hearing Martin's story there. People that do take their sort of maybe their competitive career quite seriously. Or their fitness career, if you're invested in the fitness industry, there are times, because you are so invested in it, you can often lose perspective and a sense of identity beyond the physique. And often people will attach their identity to their physique. And as soon as, for whatever reason, it reaches a level of normalcy, it hasn't deteriorated, it's just it's at a state of being normal, we can often get down on ourselves for not living up to a certain standard. And just knowing that you you've changed your focus from being so focused on, the physique, and now focusing on processes and getting fulfillment from that. It's shifted your psyche, and you're in a happier, healthier mindset from a psychological standpoint. And I think anyone that's listening that does take their, competitive career seriously and tying in with that, their physique development, do understand that you are more than the physique and that you should be able to get fulfillment from processes, as Martin mentioned, focusing on, am I lifting more? And I know we've spoken over the last few weeks about the importance of focusing on strength performance or channeling our focus towards how we train and getting enjoyment and fulfillment from goal setting orientated towards that. I think it lends itself to being in a happier, healthier mindset and more balanced mindset.
Oh, I mean,
and I think also too, you probably honed in on the fact that, Martin, what it took for you was really having a really good look at your inner game. So, starting to identify the things within yourself that were making you or leading you to be susceptible to those behaviors that you knew were unhealthy. And I think it sounds to me like that was like the key and the starting point then to start to try to unravel, what was a bit of a messy time for you, I guess, at the time. And to be honest with you, there are so many people out there listening to this that have gone through or are going through exactly what you just described. It is so common, and it is, it's something that it's quite scary, and it's something that I really feel, concerned for people when I see it or hear it, that they're going through it in the midst or in the throes of that process. If you could give a tip or a piece of advice, I guess, to someone listening that might be in the midst of one of these, really strong binge purge type processes, what would it be? What would you give them as a first port of call?
Yeah, I would just say to try to focus on, for example, training. A lot of people, and personal training, as a personal trainer, a lot of the clients I actually deal with, they're training because they don't like certain parts of their body, or because they hate this part of their body, or I don't like. It's again, it comes back to insecurities, right? But it's totally normal. We live in a world now, in a very superficial world where, with the kind of emergence of social media and stuff like that, even if it's subconscious, we're comparing ourselves to other people non-stop. So it's only normal for that to be actually even worse nowadays, for people to think, Anyways, to focus on training, again, it kind of sounds a little bit like woo-woo, right? But to train because you love yourself, right? You should be, the right reasons, it's easy for me to sit here and say this is the right reason to train, but you should focus on training because you want to take care of yourself and do things in life. And when it comes to the nutrition as well, we all know how important that is, You'll start connecting the dots if you just give it a bit of time, in terms of one tip, for example, is to try and eliminate or reduce processed foods and just focus on eating primarily whole foods, because that for me was so transformative. It's unreal. So I guess if I could just say in one or two sentences, it's, train because you want to take care of yourself, and not because you hate yourself, because that's kind of the wrong reason. And
love that.
Yeah, and just try and tune in. And I think one of the most important things is who you surround yourself with and what you actually choose to tune into. So, most of us, well, I don't do this anymore, but get up in the morning, straight away you're on social media, scrolling through, you're putting yourself in a state of stress straight away. We have all this amazing information out there, like you guys with your podcast and your message, my podcast, Optimise Your Body. If you tune into the right stuff, that will then, eventually it will sink in, and you'll start thinking, do you know what? Before you know it, you're in the shape of your life without thinking about it. But it just takes time.
Yeah.
Surely the weather in Australia plays a huge role as well, mate.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, definitely. That plays a massive role. Yeah. You're walking around
hitting those beaches in the Australian summer.
Yeah,
certainly is a much better place to be.
Oh, definitely. And don't get me wrong, right? I just wanted to say I love looking good. I don't want to make out I'm this kind of hippie person who just likes to, I like to look good, right? So, it's just.
We saw what your idea of cuddling Martin is. It's all good. We've got that idea.
Don't worry.
Exactly. You got it in one.
So, hey, listen, before we move on from this, I've had a lot of experience with clients who've gone through what you've discussed as your journey, Martin. And I just want to throw out for anyone listening, there is this book that I've had a couple of my clients have some great success with, and I'd really recommend and urge you to maybe go ahead and get it. You can also get it on audio if you don't like to read, or you want to have something you can tune into in the car or what have we. And it's called Brain Over Binge by Catherine Hansen. So brain over binge. Go and check it out, guys, because if you are someone that is going through those periods and needs maybe a different way of looking at it, definitely have a look at that book. It's been a really good help for quite a few of my clients.
I'll write that down now. Brain over binge.
Yeah, Brain Over Binge by Catherine Hansen, and it is on an audio, so you can get it. I've got a couple of clients that don't like to necessarily spend time with their head in the book, so we've got it on audio instead. But we've had 10 really good success stories come out of some of the strategies that are adopted inside that publication. So definitely look at it, guys.
I think that's excellent that we've got those sort of that we're recommending these sort of resources.
Oh yeah,
there will be listeners that I can guarantee that are dealing with this, and because it is so I know that Martin just mentioned before that often the influence of social media can have a negative impact on people and a skewed perception of things. Also, one of the other things is that you can often see people their eating disorder is actually validated through likes, comments, or trophies. And you don't know that individual may be, struggling. So, maybe the eating disorder has lent itself to them looking a certain way in an unhealthy way, but the product that they've produced on stage or in a photo that they're getting gratification from looks a certain way. And you can fall into that cycle that Martin was speaking about. So I would highly recommend that anyone who is dealing with these sort of pressures and may or may not be in denial about the relationship that they have with food, definitely read that book that Ali, or listen to that book that Ali's recommended, because the first step is to take action on these things rather than to allow them to fester away and to play with your mind. So great work, Ali. I love that.
Good point.
Definitely. And Martin, look, I actually did a post today on Instagram, and it was all about, getting clear on goals. And, that moment where, you may have always wanted something, or you may have had your head focused on a certain aesthetic outcome. But when you actually break it back and look at what is required to get there or to achieve or attain something that you think you want, you might actually find it's not what you want at all. You might actually find that in fact, you want something completely different or slightly more flexible than what you're, wanting to go for. So I think, again, it's got to be made very clear to yourself what your actual goals are, and whether or not you're killing yourself, like some people are in some situations, for something you actually don't even want at all. Because to me, Martin, it sounds almost like that's a process you got to in your journey as well, where you went, is this really what I want? You understood, the balance of the space between one end of the spectrum to the other, where you wanted to sit. And then once you got really clear about that and your why, which was more about optimal health and longevity, it fell into place, didn't it?
That's exactly right. Yeah. And, that's spot on what you said there, because, it's just realizing why you're doing it. And it's just self-awareness, really. Like we were saying about the binge eating as well. It's like, a lot of people, I think about 50% of people nowadays with an eating disorder fall into that binge eating disorder category, where a lot of people do have this issue, but they're not quite aware of it. So I think self-awareness is just key, really. I mean, and another example with like nutrition and stuff was another thing which kind of excelled me forward with my journey was just tracking my calorie intake and learning about kind of what not so much calories, but what nutrients work well in my body, and what my maintenance calories were, and just these kind of things are really, really effective long term, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, it's important to empower and educate yourself where you can. You're not going to learn everything overnight, but you will reach a stage where over time you'll want to be. You're naturally inquisitive. I find if you're on this fitness journey and you're wanting to better yourself, whether it's from a physique development point of view, or your performance in the gym, or just holistic health, you will have that natural inquisitive nature to learn more. And the more you can educate and empower yourself, the more likely you'll be able to, I guess the key thing there is feel empowered to make those informed decisions, understanding, the caloric density of the foods that you're eating and being mindful of that, but also being mindful of the micronutrient density. What foods are actually going to make you feel better, and what foods are actually going to wreak havoc with your gut, no matter how tasty they tend to be. So I think just listening to Martin's transition from a psychological standpoint, he key take homes for me is to educate yourself. and read as much as you possibly can, but also getting different perspectives from podcasts from people that show you a different light, and they share the same passion for fitness, but they've probably got a more a balanced view or perspective on things, which can positively influence you. And I have no doubt that, Martin, with all the work that you've done with your podcast, you obviously interviewed a vast array of people within the fitness industry beyond competing. And I'm sure that those experiences are subconsciously shaping how you view leading a healthier lifestyle.
That's absolutely
It's pretty
right.
cool when you think about all the things you can do, all these different avenues like podcasts that we have. Like there's something that I did yesterday. Now, I don't advise people try this, but I did it just to see how my body would respond and just to test my mental strength, I guess. So I did a 20-hour fast. I've been listening to I listen to Ben Greenfield podcast. And he does some pretty whacked out things like 4 6-day fasts or something like that, like 4 to 6 days he'll fast. Anyway, so I did 20 hours fasting. I gave myself an enema, and so I did that to start the fast, and I went 20 hours, nothing in the GI tract. Then I did an infrared sauna. I also did three doses of 1,000 milligrams of berberine throughout the day just to drop blood sugar right down.
Very smart move.
And okay, I will admit I did not feel my greatest yesterday, but I really
no
good
shit.
Today. So it was something that I thought I'd test out and just see like how things are going.
Just throw the kitchen sink in all at once, isn't it?
Martin's
Why not?
thinking to himself, this is so far from my idea of balance.
No. It's true though. It's a very good point you made, because that's the problem. Like, people take things to the extreme, and I'm not saying that this is an experiment, right? So like, each to their own. But like, people, for example, with fasting, it's almost like fasting is a buzzword now, and people who haven't built the foundations. They're not eating the right foods for the most part, and then they're trying to fast, but they're not fasting for health reasons, which is, if you look at all the benefits of health, right, from a health perspective, right, they're doing it to lose weight, which straight away is a really, really bad idea. Essentially, you look at food then as, I'm going to starve myself to get leaner, and it's like, that is not the way to do it. You know what I mean? So,
as a disclaimer to everything that I just mentioned, sorry.
No, that was great. I might try that myself though. That sounds pretty good.
Do not try this at home, anybody. Okay? I only did it. Okay, now I do regularly, when I'm in comp prep, I regularly do 16 hours fasted. So
I do that every day.
4 hours extra was nothing for me.
Yeah,
but I know a lot of people that just trying to get to 14 hours fasted is like getting blood from the stone. So
I don't know.
It's extremely difficult.
Jared, you had me at the fact that you said 20 hours plus an enema. I mean, my God.
It was gold. But it delivered a really good result. I feel.
I'm sure it did.
Today.
Greenfield.
Don't do this if you've never done fasting. Do not do any of the above that I just recommended. Build your way up. And like Martin said, you need to actually get a healthy metabolism before you go pulling food out of it for long periods of time, because we need to build the metabolic rate up before we bite into that at all. But yes, it takes time. I mean, don't just go out and go straight for a 4-day fast with infrared saunas every day and multiple enemas. You'll kill yourself.
Mate,
I don't know how you do that.
Too much. I like food too much. But I like food too.
I just love having massive meals. I'm not going to lie.
I found intermittent fasting to be so exceptionally good for me, and look, everyone that listens to me on the podcast knows that I run this 24/7, every day of the year. But the reason for me finding it actually initially, going back about we've been nearly 6 years now, was because of my time on the floor with clients. So I'd be up and I'd start work at 5 a.m., wouldn't actually stop till 11, and the whole concept, I would not eat or take time in between my clients, and I was back to back. So I would break and fast, and I'd break my fast at that fasting point when I'd finish with my last client for the morning, split. Now, I obviously went on to then find such significant health benefits and so much a composition benefit for me personally, and for my physique, it works so optimally that I've just carried it on and continued it. And a 16-hour window of fasting for me, I found has definitely been the sweet spot. But I can still remember the first month I did it far out. I thought my throat was cut. But now I'm good. Now I'm sweet. And now I'm not even hungry in the mornings. I function better, in fact, in the mornings without having had food.
Yeah, I think from a mental perspective, hormonal health, metabolic health, it can be very beneficial, but it takes time to build up to a point where you can do that.
And it's not for everyone, you know.
It's not for everyone.
No, not at all. I know some people.
Yep,
I know some clients that get really bad results if they fast. They get sick.
Correct.
Their blood sugar drops too low. They don't feel good. They've got no energy, and then the next day is even worse. So no, it is not for everybody. But like Martin said, listening to different information, trialing things, seeing what works for you, because it'd be great if it was a one-trick pony and there was only one way approach to this, but it isn't.
We'd all be out of jobs.
We'd all be doing enemas 20-hour fast and saunas with Jared. That's what we'd be doing.
Exactly. That's the only reason. That's the only reason fasting is not like as big a thing like supplements, for example. Right? You can market it. You can sell it. How do you sell fasting to people? You know what I mean? Like sooner or later they'll figure out a way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, probably. They'll even put a bottle on it.
Exactly. Magic pill.
And look, how you choose to distribute your calories throughout the day and when you choose to ingest them, everyone's just mentioned there that it does come down to the individual. And what Ali was just mentioning there, how her lifestyle at that particular point in time, it constituted what she was like. Often I say to clients and I say to anyone, how you choose to partition your calories throughout the day is entirely dependent on your personal preference. How you perform at the gym is one factor. How you feel should actually be the main priority throughout the entire day. And lifestyle considerations have to come into play. Yeah. If you are working on the floor and it's more conducive with your lifestyle to have your your daily calorie intake within that 8-hour window, that if that fits within your lifestyle and you feel comfortable with doing that and perform optimally doing that, then go for it. If you perform better having more frequent meals throughout the day, then you should do that. How you choose to partition is up to you. But just listening to, Jared's extreme example in terms of but the take-home message is still the same. Listening to different bits of information, evaluating them, and the only way that you can evaluate them is often through trial and error to make that objective assessment and finding what works for you. And I know that all of us as trainers and coaches, when we go through the process of molding or designing a training program or a protocol around the individual, this is the process that we go through with regard to objective analysis through trial and error. And that's even, the same thing could be applied to a training program as well. So, I
think it's always keeping an objective-based outcome focus where we're looking, always at that evidentiary data. So 100% it is. And you've got to, I think the more we can empower people to be able to do that for themselves as well as with a coach, or, at least collaboratively with a coach, then the better we're setting the population up for good health change, and optimal health change. And that's ideally what we want. As practitioners and professionals in this field, that's ideally what we want, is to leave people better than when we found them and with better equipped skill set to actually look after themselves more optimally. Really, that's what we want to do.
Definitely. And habits, I think that the kind of one of the underlying themes of this podcast is the power of habit. That's actually a book. I don't know if anyone's read that book, The Power of Habit. But it's just basically like 40% of the things we do are habit. Only like roughly 60% are decisions, 40% are habit. So most people I come across actually eat food out of habit. And that's one good thing, like not so much fasting, but just going maybe every now and then, for example, like if you were to skip breakfast, once you do that a couple of times, you realize actually you're not hungry. We have tens of thousands of calories of fat stored in our body to keep us alive, if we were dumped on a desert island, for example. So, a lot of things we do are just purely habits. So it's just a case of forming better habits, I guess, overall.
Yeah, great.
And we've spoken about that at length on this podcast with regard to, and we broadly speak about the importance of consistency. But it's consistency with those habits and processes. And I think, hearing Martin's progression over the years, rather than getting fixated on results, focusing on processes. So if we can get into the habit of executing on processes to the point where they become subconscious activities that we don't think about, we just do. I mean, all four of us, the very thought of not training, people laugh at me when I say when I say I'm going on holiday. And then I make the conscious effort to go to the gym. They're like, why? And it's like, because I don't know any better. And if you
I book where I'm staying around the gym. That's like one of the best things.
That's exactly right. Where's the nearest gym?
He goes, am I going to be close to a gym, walking distance or not? And is there not a Whole Foods, because am I or am I not in America? That's pretty much how it goes. And then I just base my Airbnb around that.
Let me ask you guys why that is then. Let me ask you why that is, or why is it you want to train when you go on holiday? If you just share that with the listeners.
If I'm going to be really honest with you, it's because 100% I am so passionate about every single bit of training, the lifestyle. Just I feel better, I run better, I think better. As a human being, I'm my best version of myself when I'm in optimal health. And optimal health to me is about taking care of myself 365 days a year, no matter what.
There we go.
I'm a little bit different to Ali. I like to keep my missus happy, and if I don't go to the gym, she knows I get cranky, and then I get in trouble.
To be honest, that's not the only reason she wants you to go to the gym. She needs to make sure that you look trim, taut, and terrific.
No,
I like that.
I'm one of the. She'll be pinching your back fat in the kitchen again.
Yeah, she would. She's nasty like that. No, honestly, I'm like one of those, I don't know what body type you'd call it, like skinny fat. But I don't train.
Oh, my God.
And when I don't train, I just get this, I just start to look smooth. So, I've got to keep my shape on holidays. I've got to keep up appearances. Come on.
Yeah, so this is where the enema comes in.
To be honest, look, it's one of those things when it comes to training, the reason I got into training and lifting weights and doing all of this was because I didn't have anything better to do after I finished high school. And it provided me with a structure and regimen to my day. But moreover, when I went into the gym and I trained, it was one win for the day. And you obviously get the release of endorphins, but it's that personal fulfillment, and it translates from my involvement in sport and wanting to tick goals and tick processes and kick goals with regard to sporting endeavors. But then it translated to knowing that I was fully accountable for the results that I got in the gym of my own accord through this pursuit. It wasn't necessarily an obligation that I needed to, and I think Martin's touched on it before, negate a negative. It's not about avoiding getting fat. It was about producing something, whether it's increasing my squat and getting a PB in that regard, or whether or not it's getting a PB in a particular exercise. It's not about negating a negative, it's about producing something. And I think that shift in perspective, that often people go into the gym, and especially if they do go away on holiday, and it's going to be timely in light of the fact that we're reaching the festive season now, people will go into the gym with a sense of guilt, or they do it out of a sense of obligation because they want to. I'm going to the gym because I want to avoid getting fat, or I'm going to the gym on holiday because I can't afford to pile on the pounds, or something of that nature. Whereas I go to the gym and I look at the extra calories that I'm consuming the holiday or whatever, and I go, I'm here to produce something, whether it's to produce a larger physique that I can look in the mirror and be pleased with. But moreover, I'm here at the gym to get a performance, and it's a small win, and you can celebrate it. And I often say to my clients, especially ones that are so fixated on the end result that they get very stressed about it, I say to them, guys, the end result will be the byproduct of your efforts in the gym. And if you can find fulfillment in the enjoyment of the execution of the process and the execution of performing a particular lift and the small wins along the way, as Martin's touched on before, the physique will be the byproduct of a healthy relationship with training. So don't walk into the gym going, I'm trying to avoid getting fat. Go into the gym going, I'm going to execute this lift, or girls, the hip thrust. put all your energy into, I'm going to execute a PB in my 5 rep max for the hip thrust with the intent, and whatever that performance is, it'll lend itself to the bigger booty that you want. And if you can shift that, you can do this long term. And it's not going to be that short game. You're going to be able to play that long game. So that's why I got, even if it's a holiday.
You can translate that to anything in life, though, right? And I hear successful people saying time and time again. For example, Ben Pakulski. I'm not sure if any of you listened to his podcast.
Oh God!
Oh, what a legend!
One of my all-time favorites.
Exactly. That's right. And he's like
one of my all-time favorites.
Exactly. He was the heaviest. I think he was the heaviest, biggest ever. Mr. Olympia competing athlete. And he said he got to the top of that mountain and he was completely empty. And you can relate that to anything, right? So, like, if you purely focus on that end goal, then you can relate this to getting in shape, right? So when you get in shape, because I've trained, probably over 1,000 people in my time, and I've been there myself, you can be in tip-top shape, right? But still not be satisfied. If you're focusing on just how you look, you're going to be disappointed. So that's why it's like you've got to fall in love with the process, just as Robbie said.
Yes, 100%. Definitely. There's got to be more substance than just that stage appearance. Definitely. To anyone and to anything that you're doing with regards to fitness goals.
Yeah. I think just hearing that, especially with people that are competing and or often get into competing for the wrong reasons. They think that perhaps a trophy or a placing will provide, fill an empty void within themselves. But anyone who's played the competing game long term or the fitness game long term has found enjoyment and fulfillment from the journey. And often that can be viewed in a very hairy-fairy way, and people can roll their eyes at that very notion. But if you've been doing it for long enough, I think anyone that is invested in this industry or invested in the pursuit of, bettering themselves through fitness can attest that there's just something to be gained from just that individual fulfillment, from ticking boxes, kicking individual performance-related goals. And, if you can really just fall in love with the process, it doesn't matter what the endeavor is. The end result will take care of itself. So,
Exactly.
100%.
Exactly. Well, Martin, look, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on board. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you.
That's all right. It's been an absolute pleasure to be on your show. I really, really enjoyed that conversation. It was awesome.
Well, I'm sure we're probably going to actually feature you again, and we may even get you to come and be a guest at one of our workshops, that's for sure, because I think that having someone that's had the journey that you've had and some of the personal experiences you've had, which, do differ from the three of us individually, I think it's always lovely. It's always lovely to have representation, and I think it's amazing we've had a male on having a conversation about these particular issues, because we've not had that yet, Martin, and I think it's very powerful. It's more common than we would ever imagine, I think, and I really hope it helps some guys out there that may be suffering from this start to identify and work on themselves, or at least maybe even speak up about it.
100%, yeah. My friend and I are both getting into the online coaching scene now as well, so we're both kind of going to collaborate together, and that's kind of like what we're going to focus on. Really, is obviously mainly men are our audience anyway, but just getting people long-term results really. And when you mentioned the workshop thing as well, I'd be more than happy to get involved with that. And I just wanted to say I was going to actually compete at the Gold Coast show that just went, but I had my mate's wedding. So when I saw the date, it was like back in July. I was like, falls right on that week. So I am planning on doing one more show at some point anyway. So stay tuned, guys.
Good, because that was going to be my final question to you would be, when is the WBFF stage going to be seeing you gracing it once again?
Hopefully next year. Will it be the pro show be in the Gold Coast again, do you reckon, next year? Have they announced that?
It will be.
Yeah,
great.
Absolutely. Baby.
So that's my plan.
October again.
There we go then. So I'm not going to say yes for certain, but that's definitely on the cards. And that's if they've still got me on the... I don't know if they've taken my pro card off me actually yet, because I haven't competed for so long. Hopefully I've still got it.
It's just, you know what it is? It's just because you went and skipped yourself from Wales to here, so they just lost you in the transit.
That's right.
That's all it is, buddy.
Exactly.
But really looking forward to seeing you up there, so I can't wait.
Thanks very much. I really appreciate the time.
Let everybody know, Martin, too, where they can find you, mate.
Yeah, so on Instagram is at Martin Silva Fitness, Silva Silva. And yeah, my podcast, as I mentioned, is Optimise Your Body. Some great content on there. I'm up to around about almost episode 50 now. And that's pretty much it, everybody. I'm on Facebook as well, just Martin Silva. Martin Silva, you'll find me on there.
What gym are you based at? What gym are you based at in Sydney as well, mate?
Oh yeah, I'm based as a personal trainer in Titan Fitness, which is in Coogee in the eastern suburbs of Sydney. So you can also find me there if you want to find me in person.
Nice.
That's
awesome
meant to
work,
be an amazing gym. I'm still yet to be there, but I've heard that it's phenomenal. So
it's a really good gym.
We'll definitely have to check it out.
Yeah, for sure. Be good to link up at some
point.
Well,
absolutely. We're definitely gonna let you know when we're coming in. But it's been an absolute pleasure, Martin. So thank you once again.
Thank you very much for having me, guys. Much appreciated.
Thanks.
You have a good night. We'll speak to you soon.
Take care, guys.
See you, mate.